All right, ready to dive into some Boston history?
Absolutely. Always up for a journey through time.
Well, today our destination is Cleveland Circle. You know, that spot in Brighton where the green line kind of does a loop-de-loop?
Ah, yes. A real hub of activity, past and present.
Exactly. We're going to dig into how it evolved from basically farmland to, well, the Cleveland Circle we all know.
Sounds fascinating. Do we have good sources? I always love seeing what kind of historical gems we can uncover.
Oh, we've got a treasure trove this time. Old maps, articles from way back, even some first-hand accounts that really bring the past to life.
I'm intrigued already. I think what always gets me is how a place can transform so dramatically over time.
Right, like picturing Cleveland Circle as just open fields is kind of mind-blowing when you see it today.
It really is, and actually we have a quote that captures that perfectly. It's from an old Brighton item article describing it as vast acres of high gravel land which have never produced anything for their owners but grass and tax bills.
Wow, talk about a stark contrast.
Yeah.
So what sparked the change? What turned those empty acres into a desirable neighborhood?
Well, a few key things happened. First, the Chestnut Hill Reservoir came into play. It was built between 1865 and 1870.
Ah, the reservoir, such a beautiful spot. It's hard to imagine Cleveland Circle without it.
Absolutely. But it wasn't just about the aesthetics. It actually solved a major water problem for Boston at the time.
Interesting. So it was both practical and, I guess, pretty to look at. Did that alone attract people to the area?
It definitely played a role, but the real game changer, the thing that truly put Cleveland Circle on the map, was Henry M. Whitney.
Okay. I don't think I recognize that name. Who was he?
He brought in the electric streetcar. Imagine suddenly you could hop on a trolley and be in downtown Boston in no time.
Ah, that makes sense. Transportation is always such a catalyst for growth. When was this?
His first line opened on Beacon Street in Brookline in 1887. A few years later, lines opened on Beacon Street in Brighton and on Commonwealth Avenue in 1909. So, commuting from Cleveland Circle became a breeze. No wonder people started flocking to the area.
Yeah, talk about opening up a whole new world of possibilities. So we've got this beautiful reservoir, easy access to the city. Did that cause a population boom?
Oh, absolutely. In 1874, Brighton had a modest population of about 6,000 residents. By 1930, that number skyrocketed to 60,000.
Oh, that's a tenfold increase. Talk about a growth spurt. So all these people pouring in needed somewhere to live, right? What happened to those vast acres from that Brighton item article?
They started filling up fast. Early on, there were some scattered mansions, but with the streetcar lines making commuting so easy, apartment buildings started popping up everywhere.
So Cleveland Circle was becoming more urban, catering to a new wave of residents.
Right.
It's amazing how those streetcar lines shape not just the landscape, but the whole social fabric of the area.
It really is. And it wasn't just the types of housing that were changing. The demographics of the neighborhood shifted too.
Oh, how so?
Well, in the early 20th century, a lot of Jewish families started moving to Cleveland Circle.
Interesting. Was there a particular reason for that?
They were drawn to the area's modern housing and the ease of commuting to jobs in downtown Boston. For instance, the Chi Odom congregation, initially located in Dorchester, relocated to Inglewood Avenue in 1968.
So a real sense of community was developing. Okay, so we've got the broader trends, but what about the specific places that gave Cleveland Circle its unique character? You know, the landmarks, the businesses that residents would have known and loved.
Oh, there are some great ones. One that immediately comes to mind is the Reservoir Train Depot. It actually started as a Boston and Albany train station and later became a trolley stop on the Riverside line.
Okay, so another piece of transportation history. What happened to it?
It eventually made way for something truly iconic, the Circle Cinema.
Oh, the Circle Cinema. I've heard so many stories about that place.
It was a real landmark. Picture this. It's 1940, and the Circle Cinema opens its doors, all gleaming with that Art Deco design and the latest technology.
I can practically see it. It must have been quite the event.
Oh, it was. And then, in 1965, it got a major makeover, adding more screens and a modern touch.
Wow, so it really evolved with the times. But the Circle Cinema wasn't the only place drawing people to Cleveland Circle, right? What other businesses played a big role?
Well, there was the Reservoir Hotel. Its history goes all the way back to the late 1800s, offering a glimpse into those early days of the neighborhood.
Wow, so even before the trolleys and the cinema, there was the Reservoir Hotel. And what about that classic Howard Johnson's? Those orange roofs are practically iconic.
Oh, definitely. The Howard Johnsons opened in 1940, around the same time as the Circle Cinema, and the trolley car house added to the neighborhood's character as well.
It's amazing how all these places, each with its own story, came together to create the Cleveland Circle we know. And of course, it wasn't just about the buildings, right? Transportation itself played a starring role.
Absolutely. Cleveland Circle's whole journey is intertwined with the evolution of transportation, from the Charles River Branch Railroad in 1852 to the horse-drawn streetcars. Then the electrification of the streetcar lines. It's a fascinating progression.
It's like watching a city come alive, becoming more connected, more accessible with each innovation. And didn't several different streetcar lines actually converge in Cleveland Circle?
They did. You had the West End Street Railway, the Commonwealth Avenue Street Railway, and even the Highland Branch, which brought train service from Newton.
So many lines coming together.
Yes. All those lines eventually became part of the MBTA's Green Line, with Cleveland Circle as the end of the line for the C Branch.
Wow, so Cleveland Circle really has always been this transportation hub. It's like all roads lead to Cleveland Circle. But amidst all this talk of transportation and development, I'm curious about the human element. What was life actually like for the early residents of Cleveland Circle?
That's a great question. And it leads us to some fascinating stories about the individuals who really shaped this neighborhood. Remember those mansions we mentioned? The ones that were later converted into apartments?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of those were built by some of Boston's wealthiest families. They were drawn to the area's beauty and tranquility.
So they were the pioneers, in a way, seeing the potential in this once rural area. I'm definitely eager to hear more about their lives and how they influenced the development of Cleveland Circle. So who were some of those early residents who left their mark on Cleveland Circle? Any names we might recognize?
Oh, definitely. One notable figure was Francis Hunnewell. He was a businessman, very wealthy, owned a lot of land in the area back in the 1870s.
Hunnewell. That name rings a bell. What was his connection to Cleveland Circle?
He played a big role in shaping the neighborhood's layout. He actually laid out Inglewood Avenue and Sutherland Road in 1872.
Inglewood and Sutherland, two of the most beautiful streets in the area. It's incredible to think they were envisioned so long ago. But didn't you mention earlier that there were some hiccups in their development?
Right, yeah, remember that financial panic?
The one in 1873.
Exactly. It was a major economic downturn, really threw a wrench in things. Lots of construction projects and investments froze up across the country.
Wow, so even a seemingly idyllic neighborhood like Cleveland Circle couldn't escape the impact of a national crisis. But clearly it bounced back. What about the businesses that popped up during that time? Did they contribute to the neighborhood's social life?
Absolutely. In fact, the Reservoir Hotel, which we talked about earlier, was one of the first businesses to set up shop in the area. It goes all the way back to the 1880s.
So picture this, a time before the crowds, the trolleys, even the Circle Cinema. The Reservoir Hotel would have been a real pioneer. Do we know what it was like in those early days?
It started out pretty modest, catering mainly to travelers passing through. But as Cleveland Circle grew, the hotel expanded too, became a real hub for locals and visitors.
I can imagine people gathering on the porch, enjoying those amazing views of the reservoir.
Exactly, sharing stories, building a real sense of community.
That's lovely. And that sense of community kept evolving as the neighborhood did, right? Especially with the arrival of those Jewish families we discussed.
Yeah.
Yes. And we even have the example of the Chai Odom congregation relocating to Inglewood Avenue in 1968, a real testament to that evolution.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to see how these different threads, transportation, housing, demographics, all weave together to shape a neighborhood story.
Speaking of stories, we can't forget the Circle Cinema. It was more than just a place to watch movies. It was a place where memories were made.
Oh, for sure. First dates, family outings, the excitement of a new release. It was a real cornerstone of the community. And you know what's interesting? The way it eventually replaced the Reservoir train depot.
Right. It's almost symbolic, isn't it? Like a physical representation of the neighborhood, shifting its focus from transportation to entertainment.
I think you're onto something there. It reflects a broader trend in urban development around that time. Cities were putting more emphasis on creating those vibrant downtown areas with lots of entertainment options.
So while the streetcar lines initially drew people to Cleveland Circle, the neighborhood was now offering more reasons to stay and enjoy themselves.
Precisely. And to add to that enjoy themselves part, we can't overlook the other businesses that gave Cleveland Circle its unique flavor. The Reservoir Hotel, with all its history, remained a popular spot.
And of course, Howard Johnson's. That's a real blast from the past.
Oh yeah, those orange roofs and those fried clams.
Classic Americana. It's funny how certain places become so tied to our memories of a particular time.
Isn't it? Even though some of these places are gone now, they still hold a special place in the collective memory of the neighborhood.
It's a reminder that even as places change, Their past can live on in the stories and memories of those who experience them. And speaking of change, let's bring things up to date. We know the Circle Cinema was demolished in 2016. What happened to that space? How's the neighborhood navigating the challenges of the 21st century? It's always a little sad to see a familiar landmark disappear. What happened to the Circle Cinema site? Did anything new take its place?
Well, actually, as of right now, the site is still undeveloped.
Really? I would have thought someone would have snatched up that prime location right away.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? There was a proposal a few years back to build a big mixed-use development there.
Mixed use. What kind of things were they thinking?
Oh, the whole shebang. A hotel, apartments, offices, some retail space.
Sounds ambitious. What happened? Why didn't it go through?
It ran into a lot of opposition from the community.
That's often the case with big development projects.
Yeah.
What were people's concerns?
Some were worried about the scale of it, how it would impact traffic in the area. Others felt it would be too much of a departure from the existing character of the neighborhood.
I see. Trying to balance progress with preserving what makes a place special is always tricky.
For sure. It's a real tightrope walk. In the case of the Circle Cinema site, the developers did try to make some changes based on the feedback they got.
But it wasn't enough to get everyone on board.
Ultimately, no. The project stalled. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens there eventually.
It's definitely a spot with a lot of potential. And speaking of potential, one thing that hasn't changed is how incredibly accessible Cleveland Circle is.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. It's still a transportation hub, just like it's always been.
With the green line right there.
Exactly. The C, D, and B branches are all easily accessible. Residents can get downtown or to other parts of the city so easily.
Which is a huge plus in Boston, where traffic can be a real beast. And it's not just the T, right?
Nope. Cleveland Circle's also well served by bus lines. Plenty of options for getting around.
And you can't beat the walkability factor either. So many shops and restaurants within easy walking distance.
That's a big part of its charm. You can do so much without even needing a car.
It's a great spot for anyone who values that kind of lifestyle. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Cleveland Circle, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on its future? We've seen how much it's transformed over the years. Do you think it'll continue to thrive?
I think so, yeah. It's got a lot going for it. Like strong sense of community, the rich history we've been exploring, and of course, the location can't be beat.
And even though there will always be those debates about how to balance preservation with new development, that's a sign of a community that cares, right?
Absolutely. It means people are invested in their neighborhood and want to see it succeed.
Well said. It's a good reminder that these places are more than just bricks and mortar. They're living, breathing entities shaped by the people who live there and by those who came before.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
This has been such a fascinating journey. We've uncovered hidden stories, explored how transportation and development shaped the area, and gotten a glimpse into the lives of the people who called Cleveland Circle home.
And what's amazing is that the story of Cleveland Circle isn't over.
Right, it's still being written.
As Boston keeps growing and changing, I'm sure this neighborhood will face new challenges. But judging by its past, I think it's safe to say that Cleveland Circle will continue to adapt, innovate, and find ways to preserve its unique character while embracing what the future holds.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Cleveland Circle. We hope you've enjoyed learning about its history as much as we have. Who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to delve into the stories of your own neighborhood. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering the hidden gems all around us.